All right, it is Wednesday, August 24th. Is that Christmas music I hear in the background, John?
Well, it could be.
I think it is the most wonderful time of the year. Kids are getting their asses back into school. The parents got a little more pep in their step.
Yeah.
Here's Riggo.
Well, almost every parent, myself being a parent, I don't have any pep in my step, Todd. This time of year, even though what you say is all true, who was it? Was it like Office Depot or something?
Yeah.
That did that.
What a great commercial.
The
guys and the gals are in their carts, and it felt like
the kids are walking around slumped shoulders, like they're going back to school. But I'm kind of like the kids. I don't think I'll ever outgrow this. The depression that one goes through the last week or so, but now we are down to the last week of August, then the realization that you're going back to school. And it was bad enough at home with my father, talking about somebody that told you what to do and when to do it. Now you're going to go to school, and everybody there is going to tell you what to do and when to do it. I don't know. I guess that's probably why I've always ended up kind of a bit on the knucklehead side, because authority figures kind of like, I know what you're saying is good for you, but is it good for me?
So you were on parole at home, and you were back in jail.
Yes.
You had to do more time when school started.
Exactly. So I am a little bit depressed. But I got to tell you something, though. This morning I had to get up. I went to the doctor's office. I'm not going to bore you with that. But I had to get up early. It was a 9 o'clock appointment. Didn't want to be late because the first time I'd been there, well, the second time, but I knew it was a different part of town, and I don't know what it's like to be in rush hour traffic. So I left early, and I had about 45 minutes to wait before I actually had the appointment. And I was sitting on the side of the street, and all the shaded trees, it's in D.C., just inside D.C., and all the shaded trees there. And Todd, I got to tell you, it was like so tranquil, and the temperature was so beautiful. It felt so much like fall, which on the flip side of this is the early signs of fall is kind of something exciting about that too.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of, you could feel that coolness was now settling in, and it wasn't this scorching heat we had like 3 weeks ago. So kind of had mixed emotions.
Last 2 weeks have been spectacular, right? Low humidity and
well, except for the last 2 days.
Yeah,
the humidity jumped back up. At least
creeping back up. Well, the next 2 days they're supposed to be warm in the 90s again.
It is,
but not ridiculous like we were 3 or 4 weeks ago
with the high humidity.
So I got to imagine, as part of your, as you go back in memories and times and things that we gravitate and hold, I got to imagine Friday nights. And when the weather would get a little cool, right? Friday night. Do you play your games on Fridays or Saturdays?
Friday.
It's Friday night football.
Now, I remember as a kid, Centralia played St. Peter and Paul in Centralia. I think Billy Cross scored a touchdown on the kickoff. I mean, this is like 1950.
For them?
56. No, Billy played for Centralia. And that was a Saturday afternoon game.
Saturday.
That's the only, and I went.
Saturday afternoon, weren't they usually homecoming or something special, maybe?
I'm wondering if it was. It could have been. But after that, there was always, the games were at night. I don't ever remember another day game.
So you were Friday Night Lights.
I was a Friday Night Light guy.
Wow.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but as it relates to this, obviously the football team here is getting ready for, well, there's probably more than one, obviously, but I'm talking about the professional team out in Ashburn. I realized just how there's been so much go on. I'm not going to get into this at all because it really seems like there's nothing left. What do you do because we don't cover the team. I mean, in the last couple of years, we've talked about him, and that is kind of like on a glide slope, like on a plane. It's getting to be less and less because I don't think we're anomalous to the people that are out there that have just kind of like, who cares? Yeah. There's a certain apathy that's descended upon this football team in this town, and I realize from when you do the kind of stuff that we do, man, all they've left for you to do is criticize. I've never seen anything, and we talked about a little bit this the other day, and I'm going to be done with it. You can make your comment, but I've never seen something that some situation, or I should say, an organization, work itself into Chinese handcuffs. I've never they try to pull themselves out, they just get themselves further in. I don't understand it. I mean, I honestly don't. And to the point where you realize they've left everybody that covers the team on an island to do. All you can do is basically criticize. There's no upside. They've yet to do anything that lifts anybody's spirit. For me anyway, from my perspective. Now, for people that are new fans or whatever, perhaps, and they're into the new franchise that started, okay, that's fair. You're starting with a blank slate. But anybody that I'm saying an older fan or that has been down the road with this franchise, you just kind of go, there's nothing left here. The Buzzards have almost picked the bones clean. That's the way I look at it. So my point, I guess, is the season's about ready to start, is don't count on the John Riggins Show to be giving you a weekly fill on what's going on with the local professional football team.
Yeah, we won't be going in depth.
Because the only thing that's going to be left, I don't know. Maybe, you know what, Todd, we ought to do a deal here. If they do something really remarkable and do something well, then we'll talk about that. But if all they're going to leave is the bitter crust of criticism, then we're just going to keep it to ourselves.
Now, you did say a key word. They do something remarkable. Now, we know there's
only one thing remarkable that I can think of.
No, remarkable can also be bad.
Yeah, but I'm thinking of remarkable in a good sense, and there's only one thing I can think of that might turn a bunch of heads. And it wouldn't be them themselves doing it. It would come from an external source.
Yeah, we're going to get some turned heads.
And I'm not going to explore that any further. What?
We're going to get some turned heads, too. There's no question. Yeah, you bring up an excellent point, because being a native Washingtonian, then being in the media business for my entire career.
Correct.
College professional football, running the Redskins network a couple of different times, getting to meet and work with guys like you and Darryl Green and Brian Mitchell and Joe Jacoby and go on.
Don't forget
on.
Dexter.
And the man,
he's probably
Mr. D.
That's him.
And to see it's the sad part that is hard to comprehend, being 60 years of age right now, that there's apathy in this town to this once was the proud crown jewel in this town, and there is no fun in just being a punching bag each week and saying, because we'd be here all day. But here's the other thing: the fans need to know that you, as a player in the Hall of Fame, in the hallowed halls, you're good for it. As a broadcaster, same deal, straight shooter, always have been. The fact that we have deteriorated into this, don't come at us as if we're supposed to be cheerleaders for this franchise, because that's not what you do. It's nothing that I've ever done or whatever. And being objective, which is what reporters and news media is supposed to do. You're supposed to be skeptical, for starters. You've had 22 years of being treated like shit, okay? So you got 22 years of behavior that's in front of you with all these revolving satellites still out there. So to your point, John, which I think was a great line, for new fans are the Commanders, which is basically a startup franchise. And if you're rooting for them and doing your thing, God bless, good luck.
Yeah.
But don't look at everybody else like we got five heads, because that franchise is guilty until proven innocent at this stage of the game. Otherwise, then you are sheep. And but that's not what I do. That's not what you do.
I mean, if you like throwing your money away, cool.
Right. And I've been working in and around this league for 35 years. That's your entire life and your career and your reputation. That is the gold standard. So we do take that position. We'll bring in George Wallace from WTOP and some other people to keep an eye on them.
Yeah.
Good, bad, or
we'll get
indifferent.
A professional's
Yes.
opinion, seeing that we're like semi-pro. Although you're a pro, I'm semi-pro. But the thing about this, Todd, is it really seemed, if you think about a relationship that you've ever had, it kind of goes from, you're in love, right? And that's what the fans were for years with this franchise. Then what transpired, then anger takes over when things ain't right? So then you get angry. But the worst has happened when you don't give a shit. And I'm going to tell you something. There are tons of fans in this town that were staunch supporters of this team. They don't give a shit. And that's kind of where I'm lumped in. When I say lumped in, voluntarily, that's where I am. It's like, I'm just tired of blah, blah, blahing about the crap that goes on. And to your point, the team president who criticized a local reporter for asking a pointed question, good God, I had proctoscopes, or what do you call them, colonoscopies, in my first year and second year down here by the press. I mean, it was just like, I got one every week.
Well, shit, you started out in New York, and you started out with that up your rectum with the New York press in the 60s and 70s?
And so I don't want to hear the crybaby, how dare this reporter ask those questions. It's like,
and his tone and his tenor.
And you're not going to, and you may not have access out here for that.
Good luck getting any special access. access. This is a person who does
That's
not
insane.
get it. It
That's
is.
insane.
It's in everybody's supposed to be back on board because I'm a new shooter in town and I'm a good guy. Well, wait a second. You still work for Darth Vader, and this is what's out there. And you want to come at everybody like this or whatever. And
that's when you turn and you walk away, because that's when you realize they are the gang that will never shoot straight. That's just, I'm sorry, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So, and that's when the athlete comes in, and that's when you don't give a shit, you don't care. So anyway,
well, to that point, John. So they only play 3 preseason games now.
They got a third one coming, right? I don't even know when they come and go. I have yet to see.
What's fascinating?
I did pull something up on the internet and watched a little bit of one game, and I kept thinking to myself, and I told you, I said, "God damn, they must have got some new lights out there at the stadium because I've never seen it so bright." And of course, then you said, "Well, they played a 1 o'clock game." Like, oh, that explains it.
Yeah,
it's a day game.
They were playing in the Northern Lights. They were up in Alaska, and they didn't kick off till 7.
Yes, not.
Well, it fooled everybody because their home game 2 Saturdays ago, the game started at 1 o'clock. I didn't know. Nobody know. I walked into a bar and he said, "Hey, you want to watch the game?" I'm like, "What game?" I thought they were showing. Game. Yeah, and it was the Commanders and. Against the Panthers. Then they played at Kansas City. That was a 4 o'clock Eastern start last Saturday.
Well, that must be something new that the league's doing.
Yeah, it's got to be in the collective bargaining agreement for some reason. And then they play the Ravens, I believe, this Saturday. Now that's their last one. Now, little known fact, John, we're going to tie all this together. You're going to feel some warm and fuzzy here. It's the 40th anniversary of the 1982 season with you and your comrades. You got it done.
Broke out of the 4-decade slump.
Yeah, that's right.
From 1940 to 82.
The 46th season in Washington, D.C. for the Washington Redskins. That 1982 season. Now, and I know you remember this. Also, so fans, you got some hope because you guys lost all your preseason games too. You played 4 and got the shit beat out of you a couple times. So you and only.
But I probably only played in 3. If I played that much.
You lost all your preseason games. And there's only one other team to win the Super Bowl and has lost all their other preseason games.
I did not know
last year's L.A. Rams.
Is that right?
So, root for the Ravens this Saturday. Ravens always beat the shit out of Washington anyways.
I don't even think you have to bother.
The Ravens are unbelievable in playing this team.
Watch them. They'll ruin it by beating the Ravens.
There you go.
And cursing themselves to the rest of the season.
There you go.
They were almost there. Anyway, I just wanted to get that off my chest. And there's a show I saw the other night. You've done a little homework on it because we talked about it. That I'm still trying to figure out if I recall this because I don't pay a lot of attention to college football. But the play was Manti. Is that his name?
Manti Te'o.
Manti Te'o, who played for Notre Dame, and actually I think finished like 2nd or 3rd in the Heisman Trophy voting his senior year, but had this weird circumstance befall him. And I can't remember. I guess the long and the short of this is the way we get information nowadays. And I think that yet we still consume it, particularly with the computer, television, somewhat radio now. We always assume people are telling you the facts. But we've entered an era, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or you're non-committed one way or the other, that both sides have complete contempt for the press. In other words, and it really, when you look at it, has fomented a lot of the problems because of the clash that's back and forth between the political landscape.
It's bad information.
Exactly. Where things are just like bizarre, where you actually hear lies being told but not accounted for. Nobody's like, if the lies support my political view,
then it's not a lie.
Then it's not a lie.
That's my truth, right. And I just need to get everybody on my side.
And it's kind of where we are anyway. If you think about all the stuff, in other words, if I want to, identify as whatever, then you have to respect that. And, I might be able to get enough people to identify with me, and all of a sudden now we got to hold, if I want to identify as a Martian, even though I may have never been on the planet, although there's other people think I have, or maybe I came from there. But it's like, that's what I'm saying, that's what we're in. So it gets down to, in this story about...
So this is the new Netflix 2-part documentary that you told me about on Monday. I knew it was coming out. Thank you for jogging my memory. You had seen it. It's called Untold, The Girlfriend Who Didn't Exist, directed by Ryan Duffy and Tony Vanuku.
Right.
And
it's basically how, and obviously it could only happen, I'm guessing, in the age of the internet. But, and who knows, maybe you could write letters and have the same. I guess you could, really, for the most part.
I saw one of these on Mayberry RFD, I believe, at one point. A new guy came into town, claimed to be somebody else. And I think Barney was all in, but then, Andy doesn't want to embarrass Barney, so Barney saves the day. I think it was a bank robber. So different times, different methods.
Same thing. Exactly. There's always going to be con men.
There's a flim-flam man, right?
Con men are not, or con women for that matter, are not unusual. But what I found about this, because like I said, you and I were doing stuff together way back when, and I kept thinking, then you said, oh, yeah, we covered that. And I went, well, I don't know, because I don't think we were doing anything the time that this...
We had just finished our daily show on Masson. Yeah, and then I was down in Miami programming a sports radio station down there. You were just getting started with Riggo on the range.
Correct. And I didn't pay any attention. Certainly I was on the road all the time. And in the woods, so I didn't have any. I mean, I didn't know who Te'o really, who he was.
Manti Te'o.
Yeah, what a great football player he was. But after watching this, there's a lot of anger that I felt, and the anger was, and he to me in this documentary. He comes across as a straight shooter, maybe extremely. And I told my wife this. I said, that could have happened to me. And of course, there was a big, what do you mean could have happened? But I'm kind of a schnook. I'm from the country. I'm surprised how many times people pull the wool over my eyes. Not that it's ever cost me money necessarily, but just stuff where they're gooning on you and you don't pick up on it until later. But then there's other aspects. She goes, no. She said, that wouldn't have worked for you. Being the long distance for 3 years, not even seeing this person that you're falling in love with. So that's where, where you kind of go, yeah, but everybody's different. But the way the press...
Let me give a quick synopsis here for those that haven't seen it yet, may not be... Let me jog your memory on this.
Yeah.
So Manti Te'o goes to Notre Dame. He grew up on the North Shore of Oahu in Hawaii. Stud athlete and one of the top prospects in all of college. Does not go to USC with the Polynesian community, the Samoans in particular. He says, I want to go to Notre Dame, goes to Notre Dame, and starts lighting it up. And he has another teammate that came with him from Hawaii that was his best friend. And there was another person from Hawaii who basically was in love with him. But it was a guy, and he played high school football.
Right. But hated it.
But hated football.
But he didn't want to disappoint his parents like a lot of people.
Exactly. So he plays the game. And so he decides to reach out to Manti, but he disguises himself as a very attractive young woman from Southern California. So he's got all the inside information. And this is the internet. It's 2011, 10, 11, 12, 13 are the years. And this guy perpetrates this fraud, and it's pretty brilliant how you use your powers for evil with and also
his acting job.
Oh my gosh, yes. So he perpetrates this fraud, and Manti, they're only communicating via the internet and on the phone, occasionally leaving message, but it's a lot of instant messaging and texting and going back and forth. And Manti is the stud of college football. He's lighting it up for Notre Dame. And then it's was it his senior season right
before the senior season? I
Michigan
believe.
State in the opening game, he gets a phone call that his grandmother had passed away in Hawaii, and so the woman's name, Lene Kakua, is the female impersonator, if you will. Well, she had been saying that she was kind of sick and was battling leukemia, I think. And her, air quotes, brother calls later that afternoon on the same day that Manti is told that his grandmother has passed away, his beloved grandmother, very close Polynesian community, that his girlfriend has just died and passed away. And so now the guys, you can't even imagine that, the evil behind that. In of itself, and I was
self-serving.
I was getting mad too at the person that perpetrated all this, and we'll delve into all the different aspects of that. But now Manti, he just runs with it, and the university runs with it. And this also speaks to how major media outlets, the biggest in the country, got duped by this, and nobody fact-checked.
And this is where my anger came from. This is where my anger came from.
And the fact that this goes on for the entire season, it's the greatest story in college football. That part I remember. And
where he rose above all the
rose above and was just lighting everybody up on the football field. A defensive player that legitimately could have won the Heisman. And everybody thought Johnny Manziel won it that year, but he was in New York, and they said the storylines are too good. This is Notre Dame, right? This is Rudy. This is win one for the Gipper. This is win one for Manti.
Not Texas Tech.
It's the Golden Domers. It had everything that we root for in this country. And then when the truth comes out, and Deadspin, which we are a buddy that Dave McKenna used to write for, and when Deadspin has since been sold and sucks now as a shell of itself, but Deadspin used to break a lot of stories.
Yeah.
And a staff of 8 people,
right.
And how they broke this story, and they did all the deep digging in the dirt and came up and said, this person does not exist. His girlfriend that died is fictitious. None of this was true. Now, this happened right before they were playing the national championship game. And this
wasn't it before the Heisman voting, too, or no?
Yes, it was. They were going to break it right before that. They didn't break it till after that, but he didn't know what to do and how to handle it. Now, as fate would have it, I'm programming this #1 station down in Miami, and Notre Dame is playing in the Orange Bowl down there. I have Notre Dame connections. We did a big event with Lou Holtz, and his charity calls Lou's Lads. And we had 100 Golden Domers at this private party. And it's all his former players that come and support his charity, raise a ton of money, and they're all there. And now this just all started coming back to me because there was this uncomfortableness in this, and something just was a little askew and a little bit off. But they basically hit it until as late as they could. And ever since this time, once this got out, what Manti Te'o had to go through, and the fact of that, was he part of this scam? Was he a closeted homosexual?
Right.
So here's now the greatest story on the planet in U.S. sports is now a fraud. And isn't that America? And I do think that, I think it's Alex Flanagan had the greatest line, they learn fast how the media in this country will build you up and tear you down quicker than they just built you up.
And they're the idiots that allowed this whole thing to happen because nobody did their homework.
The New York Times, ESPN.
And that's what
CNN.
And that was really the reason I brought this story up, was for those very reasons. We live in an age now where, in all honesty, I don't know what you can believe anymore.
It's
I honestly say that because everybody's got a spin on it. I mean, it probably always has had that. But in this regard, where you have, the most sophisticated news gathering organizations in the world, and they whiff on something like that, to me, that's pretty big. And to have somebody like Deadspin come in, like you said, staff of 8 people, start looking into this. In other words, they basically said this is too good to be true. And
they went in, as journalists are supposed to do. You don't accept anybody's word today. You have to verify.
Exactly.
You can't, but you are. It's not a fact until you confirm it's a fact. That's where we are today, in my opinion. And you really, really have to do your homework, because the big boys, they're bought and paid for in different ways that you can't even imagine. And who controls the newsroom? Who controls the megaphones? And it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. Everybody does it.
It's completely, what you understand is it's completely impersonal and nobody cares. And that's the part that really aggravates me, that people are so reckless and they write what they want. And they take. And the only reason I'm saying this too, because had I been doing this, I don't know how I would have reacted to this. I would have been a little bit incredulous that you could be in love with somebody and never have met them. Then I'm going, but people are different because, obviously you're young, you have a lot of, testosterone, hormones, and you'd figure there'd be some kind of a physical connection there, but there wasn't. So that kind of you go, but what he went through after this broke out was the memes, is that what they're called?
Yeah.
And all the humiliation, and they, like he
It still is to this day.
Like exactly, like he had some kind of rare disease that was communicable. I mean, 10 times worse than the virus that's been going around.
And I think, to your point, you coming from a small town, insulated, especially your time,
exactly.
and when you came out, and the lack of information everybody had, that you want to go, and I think that's for Midwesterners, right? People say how friendly we are, and want to get along because you want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt.
Correct.
And the other thing I think to understand about this story and why it also resonated, and I highly encourage everybody to watch this, because he is a good guy.
That's exactly what I felt.
He is a good guy,
outraged for him.
And his family, and right, that pillars, and that's why you also see so many Samoans and the Polynesians football players, because it's family, faith, and football, they say, is their foundation. And it's a way out for a lot of them. And I was so impressed by his parents. They did not cut him any slack. His dad was extremely tough on him. It's like, how could he do this? He embarrassed the family. He's still my son. I love him. We're going to get through this together. But, it's kind of like, how naive could you be to allow this to happen? And as his fame kept rising, and all the yes people around him and everything else, and he still wanted to believe, because that guy / girl who is now transgendered, the person
and lives in American Samoa,
and the person that perpetrated this fraud on him, they knew all his weaknesses. He was his kryptonite, and she knew how to speak to his heart and hit him in that special place where you're like going, oh, God damn, this is evil.
Yeah, he came across to me as such a sincere, down-to-earth person. And when you see, I mean, there's a lot you can say besides being a football player. Just as a human being, he seems like the kind of person that you would want in your life as one of your best friends. He's that kind of solid person. He's the kind of guy that if were in Vietnam, if you were in Afghanistan,
you
want him in the foxhole.
He's a foxhole. So right, and that family and that community, 100%. He got played. I hope
it happens. But boy, the price. But the price he had to pay because people didn't do their homework, and this is the beauty of the press. This is the beauty of the press.
Right.
They're wrong. As I said, they don't care. They ain't going to come out and tell you they were wrong. Not really. They'll bury it on the end back. Oh, yeah, we made a little mistake here type of deal. Because why do they do that? Because then they lose their credibility and you won't buy the bullshit that they're putting out.
John, it's all fodder, right? I tell every people, all these goddamn networks, you got 24/7, running radio station, news and politics. Boy, you got a lot of time to fill. You need these types of stories. Then you sensationalize, you make them. Now this has lasted 3 days, 5 days, 5 weeks, or whatever else.
Exactly.
Oh, but the retraction and all that, oh, well, that's buried on page 3, and oops, our bad.
Yeah.
And that's the danger, and why our media trust is Congress.
It's got to be as low as
Congress, the media is no bueno, because people, I think you can't fool people enough. We have more information at our disposal, but so why is it so bad right now? Because
maybe it's because there's so much.
Well, because people are using it for their own gains in ways that are not always truthful.
Well, that, and if you think about it, it is sensory overload. There is,
no
everywhere
question.
you turn, you're getting new information, a new angle of this. Everybody's trying to figure out basically a new way to invent the wheel. The same story, let's give it a different twist. Let's look at it from this, and that's really the competition that you have, which is what's driving the economy of the press. And really it gets down to, like, if you want to, I find that, well, now I don't want to get into the political scene, but if you think about it, if you're conservative or if you're a liberal, well, it depends on which channel you want to watch on TV. And then to me, it gets like a football game. It gets like a basketball, because you want to watch the channel that actually, oh, they scored some points there because they really hurt the Democrats, or oh yeah, they got some good shots in there on the Republicans, and you feel better about it because yeah, how can they do that? It feeds your own sense of perspective of what's going on in the world, when really you have to step way back from that and to discern really what's going on. I don't know what is going on.
I know.
It's hard to believe.
You gotta do your homework. You gotta find some reporters / some seasoned people that have done this for a while, that you know, trust, and respect, and then you got it. But you have to seek out more than one or two. You just have to.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's why you see so many independent people that are going to Substack or some of these other outlets or whatever else, because they can't really tell the truth and do their jobs. And that is a long list of people now that have their bona fides and have their chops.
And that wraparounds to the football team when they start condemning the press for asking the wrong question.
The wrong question and in the wrong manner with the wrong tenor. Carson Wentz, who probably has made close to $100 million, he's a big boy. Okay, these guys are big boys.
He could care less.
And
he handled it very well.
He actually is like, and Scott Abraham, nice enough guy on 7, whatever, you know, and he led off with it, and the question was like, well, what are the two big things? Why is Carson Wentz here? I'm thinking in my mind going, okay, let's see, it's his 3rd team in 3 years.
End of the line.
He was a golden boy up until he got injured in Philly. They ran him out of there. Then he went with his offensive coordinator and went to Indianapolis. Wow, after a year's time, they shipped him off. So what are the big knocks is, why are you here in your 3rd team in 3 years? And the knock on you is that you've been wildly inaccurate for the last number of years and in training camp. That is, oh my God, how dare you? What is this guy supposed to have pom-poms and be part of, wear the hot pants and this isn't your own media team.
Your livelihood is threatened by the person that's actually running the organization.
And isn't it hysterical, because there hasn't been any big press here in 20 years, let's just face it, to changing dynamics and how everybody sucked up to this team because it was the rising tide that lifted all boats, right? You had to have an association with the Redskins. And they go, you don't need it now? So do your jobs out there and investigate and report on these guys. And I call them, John, and I did coin this a number of years, and I want my goddamn credit. If you're going to be a reporter, then report. Don't be a repeater. And everybody out there is a repeater. And they're out there asking the softball line. Did you know that this just came out? So this came out yesterday or 2 days ago.
Are we going to criticize? Because we may
a smidge, okay. Because this is really more about, again, media, do your damn job. This isn't about puff pieces and all, and it's also not about being an asshole and being that. It's about being fair and asking the tough questions that we care about because of a losing franchise that everybody wants to root for. But don't make us be Lucy and Charlie Brown. No, I'm going to hold it for you this year, Charlie. Charlie, how many years have we been doing this bit? This is the year I do not let go of the football. Then after about the 2nd or 3rd week. So did you know that Chase Young was placed on the physically unable to perform list yesterday? Has to miss the first 4 games, and they don't really expect him back till about, I think they said maybe week 7. That not only did he tear his knee up, but he ruptured his patella. That was never reported, never diagnosed, and everybody's saying, oh, how much more serious this is, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, because that came out yesterday. Wow. So that was a shock. So don't be repeaters, be reporters, okay? You'll have a longer-lasting career. So what if the knuckleheads out there want to, because otherwise just go watch, Washington Commanders produce propaganda.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what, and we kind of wound it back into that, which I didn't really intend to do, other than my criticism of the press, because I think that integrity is completely, which makes you wonder if it ever was there. But it was, you go back through time, and you look at how the press has evolved, and you have to say that it has, because back in, we'll go all the way back to what I know. When I say I know, I don't, because I didn't live during those times. But, athletes back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, they were put on a pedestal. And even though the reporters knew that they really might not be the Jack Armstrong, All-American, the boy types, they portrayed them to be that in the paper.
Babe Ruth.
Yeah, that's funny you should say that's the very guy. He's the poster boy for all this stuff. But the point I'm saying, now that's all evolved into now it's a game of gotcha is what it all gets down to. And then when you get something where you're actually complicit in the gotcha, and what do you do? Like I said, it's just like, well, we just move on. We just, deal with it. I'm sorry that we sullied your reputation. Well, I'm not even sorry. Just deal with it and get the fuck out of my face. Yeah. That's kind of the way it works.
Yeah.
He was actually damaged very much so by the publications that reported all this. It cost him serious money.
John, that's where I'm going to put a bow on this bad boy.
Thank you.
So you take Manti Te'o, Heisman Trophy runner-up, won every other award, this unbelievable story, and he was, I cannot imagine him not being a top 5, top 10 pick in the NFL draft.
I wouldn't accuse you, but I don't know anything about it.
2013, okay?
That was his draft class?
That was his draft class. And they had instituted the rookie salary cap back then as what it was part of it, so it was slotted. So you knew. So he slid, I think, to the 38th pick overall into the second round.
Mm-hmm. Which make him, what, the 6th pick in the second round?
That sounds about right. So he, his earnings and his signing bonus and everything in the first year totaled $2.5 million. Now, his entire... He played 4 seasons in San Diego. He played 3 seasons with New Orleans, and he was last on a practice squad for the Chicago Bears in 2020. His total career earnings, I'm going to round it up to $10.5 million.
Still not a bad haul.
He would have made, had he been a top 5 pick, close to $20 million just the first year.
Just right out of the block.
Right out of the blocks. Top 10. He's making way more than 10.5 right out of the blocks. So this cost him tens of millions of dollars. Forget
generational wealth.
Generational wealth, the embarrassment. And I went through a range of emotions with this as well, because I'm like going, all right, but you do see the sincerity and the sweetness in the guy. I hold him culpable. Let's call it 80-20, because this fraud was so brilliant. And when Dr. Phil, they did the interview with Dr. Phil, and the FBI experts and the voice experts and Secret Service experts to analyze the audio of this guy throwing his voice and getting into character and playing Lene, his secret girlfriend. He said, it's 1 in 10 million, but he's good. He's good. And Dr. Phil's like, hey, they said that that's your voice. That's my Dr. Phil. I'll be working on it.
Oh, that was good, Todd. And I'm thinking, Dr. Phil, you're a blockhead.
I was thinking that too.
It's like, oh yeah, he's really.
So I'm getting ticked off because the person was, and they're calling it now gender dysphoria or whatever. It's obviously this person, and you see it come out in this series, John. This person's got all kinds of issues. So this person perpetrates a fraud. I'm like going, how in the hell is this legal? Isn't there some kind of recourse? And then, and so catfishing, as we checked with the law firm of Behrensweig and Leonard.
I might have heard that before, but I didn't really know what it was.
Well, there's a whole show out MTV created where they do this. Ashton Kutcher, I believe, he was behind one of these prank series. And it's no different
than... It's like the Candid Camera.
There you go. Alan Funt.
Alan Funt. Exactly.
Yeah, from blasting. So catfishing in itself is not illegal. The act of using another's pictures, talking to people online is not... It is often a steps toward illegality, and it gets into the illegal if you're using copyright, trademarks illegally. Identity theft leads to another person's personal financial data. Right. Fraud, including asking others to send money or goods, never happened. Solicitation of minors involving minors in a crime didn't happen. Unauthorized access to a system or network didn't happen. Recording or taking pictures of people without consent didn't happen.
Well, wait a second now. He actually used a real girl that exists to actually, it was the photos that he would send to, or she would. We're going to have to call. He's a male. The perpetrator is biologically male and identifies female. So, but I'm going to refer to him in their what do you call it, natural sex, which is a male.
Right.
But the male actually found a photograph of this girl, I guess probably that was in California, Southern California.
They found her in California. She was the unsuspecting, unwitting, unknowing.
She had no idea the whole time. And then on top of it, that one juncture where, because he'd already been, well, the best part is it's turned into a soap opera and then some, because it truly is one of those, you can't make it up. Because then miraculously, Lene came back from the dead. And that's when. Now, can you imagine what's his name? Manti's brain was doing on that?
That's when he said, I hung up on her.
But he says, okay, if you send me a photograph with, and And so the perp, he contacts the girl that he had stolen the photograph from and says, "Hey, could you do this?"
Perpetrated another fraud. The layers of
and
evil.
the fact that she just went along with. I mean, it's just like you can't make it up.
And that's where this person at the end of
that's the 110 million right there.
Yeah,
it ain't the fact that he could perpetrate this voice. It's the fact that he actually got all these pieces to fall in place. I mean, you talk about something that had a lot of moving parts to it.
Check it out, The Untold Story on Netflix. Riggo gives it 2 thumbs up. But now we're going to talk about. You do give it 2 thumbs up, right? Or is
I give
one
it
thumb?
1 thumb and 1 finger. It's not quite 2 thumbs. It's 1 thumb.
Cisco Liebert, I didn't want to have your own.
It's kind of like in basketball. He's shooting a 1 and 1 thumb. He's shooting a 1 and 1.
Was it Riggo tested, Riggo approved here for our O'Connor Plumbing boys?
That's it.
All right. Len Dawson passed away, the legend. This photo just is so amazing on so many levels. Len Dawson, Kansas City boy. I believe Len was 87 or 88. He had been ill for a while here. His family made the announcement here in the last 24 hours. He was so fascinating in doing some additional research on. So I remember the second Super Bowl. I was old enough that they played in it. They won.
They beat the Vikings, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I don't remember.
But it wasn't the second Super Bowl.
Their second.
Yeah, exactly.
Their second. But they played in Super Bowl I.
Correct.
And this is halftime.
I thought it might have been after the game because I see the green on the knee, which isn't a good sign when your quarterback's got his uniform.
So he was already getting dinged at halftime because there are conflicting reports. But I just read this from the Kansas City Star today. And the photographer who has since passed that they interviewed, so Hank Stram had given him exclusive access to these photos. And he said, you snap away, snap on this, and da-da-da-da-da. And he goes, but you can't use them unless we beat the Green Bay Packers. So the guy had to sit on them for a while. Then Life magazine did an expose in 2013, and this was one of the photos that was released. So there's a couple of reports saying this is post-game, but the Kansas City Star, and I'm going with their team, localized, said, no, this is halftime. The guy's firing up a Mickey, drinking a Fresca.
I was wondering what that was. That's Fresca.
That's Fresca.
I was going to say, I can't tell for sure, but I can see it now. Fresca.
Are those Riddell cleats? They look like the old Riddell?
Yeah, they're not XPs, or what were they? XLs, XPs, I can't remember. No, maybe because they had the little white triangle here. But they look but they do look like Riddells. I would guess that's what
I remember, that high lacing system, the thing that they had there.
Exactly. Well, this is I don't think you see this much anymore in the locker rooms. But when I first went to the Jets, it was almost like being in prison. You know, when you get thrown
You say it was Emerson Boozer or Matt Snell?
I'm not going to mention any names, but
you told the story, man.
But sitting right beside me for the home opener.
What was his number?
No, I'm not going to give that out either.
Was it 44?
And I look, and he did it every game, but he'd come in after warm-ups, pregame warm-up, and he'd drop his pants down around below his knees, and he'd sit on his bench, his little stool, in front of his locker, and first thing he'd do, he'd fire up. But then you'd look down over the defensive side of the locker room, and there was a couple, 3 guys down there. It was like, what the hell did I get myself into here? I'm in here with cutthroats. These guys are real.
This is a different
saloon. These are men I'm in here
This is a different saloon than I remember in college.
Exactly. These are men I'm dealing with. That was always my take on it. But yeah, I'm sorry to hear that about Len. He's a good guy.
And to think that in 1966, kiddos, when a lot of NFL players, I'm guessing quite a few of them, they held other jobs in the off season.
Oh, almost everybody did. I was one. Of course, that was before me. Maybe I would have, but I was getting paid just enough money. They weren't. I'm saying when he first started out, I'll bet you his first year's salary was probably, I'm going to throw it out there, maybe $10,000, $12,000.
Oh, yeah.
Which, compared to the average stiff, it was a lot of money.
Right, in those days.
But still, compared to, if you do the comparison, it still doesn't even come close to what they make today.
So Lenny was the sports director at the local, I think it was an NBC TV station. He would go to practice and then go do the sportscast at night.
See, that's the part that is. While he was playing. You said in 66 he started?
Yes, in 66, 67 he started and was doing the
and
TV
he did
sportscast.
That for the rest of his career. And he played through, I think, 72, 73, something like that. I don't know, because I remember playing with the Jets. We played Kansas City at Shea in 72, and he was their starting quarterback.
Was he?
Yeah.
And then he and Nick Bonacani had that iconic show on HBO.
Inside the NFL.
Inside the NFL.
Is it still going, or did they finally?
It just ended a couple of years ago. It metamorphed into, but now with all the coverage that everybody has, you can't wait a week. But that was an iconic show.
Yeah, it was.
In its day
and him
and
and
time.
Nick were very good together.
Oh my gosh, they were tremendous.
You had a defensive
together.
guy, and you had the offense. Basically, both of them were quarterbacks to both sides of the ball.
And two Hall of Famers. And two guys that, you like their banter, and they could bust each other's chops, and it was
fun.
It was one of a kind.
Yeah.
All right, John, we want to remind everybody that this upcoming year of 2022, this is hard to believe. It's the 40-year anniversary of that magical season that launched it all for the Washington Redskins, this town, and we're going to have some fun with that this year. And working with some of my guys in the Hogs. So take a look at this.
Oh, yeah.
So this is the original Hogs Night Out, established in 1982. Coach Bugle deemed him the, look at his Hoggies. And this was taken after your Super Bowl win, in which the guys dressed up. We have an accompanying video to this. And rip them off. Rip off the...
Well, you got Russ Grimm, starting on the left, Russ Grimm, Freddie Dean, George Stark. The guy asleep in the very middle, which is not unusual, is Mark May. And you got, what's his name? It's not Joe Jacoby, obviously, but in these photographs, there's a character, like, I forget what it is, but it's almost out of a Charles Dickens novel. I can't think of who I want to say. And then, of course, you got Donnie Warren and Jeff Bosky and Doc Walker down being seated.
So, and to think
Doc, obviously, and Bosco closest to the champagne bucket. I would have been in that photograph, but they didn't have enough champagne, so I stayed home.
So we want to invite everybody to check this out at the-original-hogs.myshopify.com. We're selling these posters. We're selling some merch on there. We got more coming and more on the way, because we want to celebrate what this franchise used to mean in this town and the halcyon days, because we're tired. And we got memories like this now that's hard to believe it's 40 years. John, for you as a player.
This is for, and I agree with you, Todd, that I'm a kind of guy that doesn't really look back very often. I mean, my mom put together scrapbooks years ago when we were in grade school, high school, and even in college. I've yet to crack them open. Maybe that day will come, the closer I see the light starting to dim. But at this point, it's not something I do. But at the same time, for the fans that were there during the glory years, and this is the very beginning of it, that it's something because, and I'm thinking basically we started to show the fans that seem to be kind of cast aside, and that have, that with the team doing what it, the way it's gone in the last 20 years, the constant losing, all the what do you call it, provocative things that goes on around it. I mean, they don't even recognize it. So maybe we'll bring back something that they do recognize and give everybody a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling for a while.
Yeah.
Because this is probably, but I don't know, the season's young. Who knows? I mean, it hadn't even started yet. Who knows? Maybe this team's going to go to the Super Bowl this year, and I'll be the first to take my hat off if they do, or if they even get it into the playoffs. I might take off my hat, but as we're talking about this, and we could do it next week. But right now, my gut feeling is, and I'll make my ultimate prediction next week, as far as the season, but I'm thinking that there's 10 losses anyway. I can see 10 losses. Not that I've even went through the schedule, but just based on so many things going on and how things operate, I don't see how they can have success. There's just too much turmoil that goes on under that roof.
And it's far from over. And I think for all of us to have a healthy appreciation, because we've lived it, that 10-year span. 1982 to 1992, how fleeting this can be in your lifetime. And you're fortunate if you ever get to experience that. So now it's 30 years later from the last, 40 from the first, 82, 30 from the last in 92. So that's generational, right?
Yeah.
It's like the Washington Bullets / Wizards and the 78.
Right. Well, exactly. And that's what I got to thinking about this was it was 40 years prior, actually 42, I think, because I think this team won the championship in 1940. So it was 42 years later that they won, or 43, whatever you want to go by, that they won their first Super Bowl and their first World Championship since 1940. And so I was doing the math, but technically this would be almost 40 years since the first Super Bowl, but it wouldn't be from the last, obviously. You'd have to add another 6 to it. But still, it's over 30. It's 30. Well, it's over 30
We're
years.
wandering in the desert, God damn it. I don't want to be dead.
2002, right? That's the last time they won it? Or 92?
92.
92.
So 30 and 40
30
years.
Yeah. So they've been out there quite a while. And so have we. We've been here way too long, and so I think I'm going to get home and jump into that refrigerator with an ice cold. I don't need an ice cold beer today. Well, I might if I do any hard work.
I'll come join you.
Listen, I got to get running. Riggo, out.